A circle is going around. Yeah. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today to discuss the most common errors made when submitting HUD contracts. My name is Diana Bustamante, and I will be showing you what to avoid in order to make sure that your contract is completed and in acceptable manner. The errors we will cover today, there are 12 topics that I want to discuss, and we need to discuss these because you want to avoid your contract being rejected. You also want to avoid your buyer losing or forfeiting their deposit. If the offer is rejected, you may not have a second opportunity if there are multiple bids on that particular property. So starting with number one, absolutely no whiteout. No to whiteout. A few years ago, they started with the electronic filing of the sales contract, which is called the HUD 9845 contract. In the past, when we were writing or typing our contracts, they specifically said absolutely no whiteout. But now, with the submission of electronic filing of the contract, they still say if there are any errors or any corrections that need to be made, they can be crossed out, but the buyer must initial next to the correction. Changes to the contract there are specific addendums that are provided for any changes that are made to the contract. A general addendum, for example, would be to correct minor errors such as misspellings of a name or the vesting type, but it cannot be used for any changes to the actual contract, any of the legal terms of the contract. There are other changes or addendums that can be used for changing the financing type if somebody's going from conventional loan to FHA or from 203B to 203K. Also, if there is a change to a purchaser or additional purchaser, so let's say we started out with a husband and now we're adding the wife or another partner, a specific addendum has to be used in order to add that additional purchaser. It also requires social security numbers for the individuals purchasing. Or if it is a company, they need to provide their TIN number, their assigned TIN number, in order to request or removal of a purchaser or a termite report request. And there's a separate addendum for the property condition information statement. Error number 2, buyer's names, signatures, and initials. It is so important to make sure that we obtain the legal name of the buyers, the purchasers, from either their driver's license or other legal document. If somebody goes by one name, but the names do not match on the contract, that contract may be totally eliminated. If the names are misspelled, they can be corrected, but we also need to get the buyer's social security card. So it is very important to avoid any problems. Please get a copy of their social security card or their driver's license up front to make sure that all of the names are correctly spelled in the sales contract. Like I said in the previous slide, if any additional buyers need to be added, then a separate addendum to the contract has to be used. Now let's talk about the vesting style or the style for the title or the deed. If somebody is a single person, whether it is a single man or a single woman, that needs to be included in the contract. if it's a married couple, or if it's tenants in common. If it's a married couple, they're buying together and they have a specific type of deed that they will get. But if it is two partners who are buying in their name, that would be tenants in common. If it is an LLC or a trust who will be purchasing the property, the articles of incorporation for the LLC or corporation need to be provided as part of the package. If it is a trust, then the trust documentation also has to be provided. Missing these documents is going to cause the proper or the offer to be rejected. So please make sure to have all of the information included up front when submitting the offer. The next error is the earnest money deposit. There is a specific line in the sales contract. It cannot be left blank. Now, the amount that has to be paid depends on the sales price and the type of property it is. So for a property which is, the sale price is less than $50,000, the earnest money deposit is $500. Properties that have a sales price larger than $50,000, the amount has to be $1,000. That is the good faith deposit. Vacant land, because sometimes they have different prices, vacant lots with a listing price less than $1,000, the escrow or earnest money deposit has to be 50% of the listing price. And for anything over that, or over $1,000 sales price, it's $500. And again, for the sale price of a vacant lot, more than $50,000, then it has to go to $1,000. For good neighbor next door properties, the amount should be 1% of the listing price, but never less than $500 and not more than $2,000. So it is very important when you are showing the property to know what the requirements are based on the sales price and what type of property it is. Continuing with the earnest money deposit. The deposit must be in the form of a cashier's check from a bank or a post office money order. It cannot be a personal check or any other type of check. The check must be made out to both the buyer's selected escrow company and the purchaser. The reason for that is that if the offer is not accepted or it is rejected after the contract was submitted, the check will go back to the buyer and they will be able to reissue or get their money back from the bank. The payee must read the name of the company, that is the closing agent. Typically, either the attorney who will be closing the contract or the transaction, or the title company, as well as the purchaser. The word "or" needs to be included so that either the title company can cash the check or deposit the check in the event of a closing, or the purchaser can cash the check in case the property transaction was rejected after the acceptance. Now, once the contract package has been accepted, the escrow money or the earnest money deposit must be submitted or delivered to the listing agent within 2 days after acceptance. Any later than that, the property may go back on the market and the offer rejected. So it's very important that once the agent receives an email that says that their offer has been accepted, they have 2 days to get that good faith deposit or earnest money deposit to the listing agent. Error number 5, proof of funds. When submitting any offer for any type of property, especially for this type of offer, it is required, if the person is purchasing with a loan, the pre-approval letter has to be dated within the past 30 days. It has to cover the purchase price. And if it is cash, then the proof of funds also has to be dated within the past 30 days. So a proof of funds letter from a bank or a bank statement also has to show the full purchase price or above. Now, this letter, whether it is a pre-approval or a proof of funds, must be in the name of the buyer who is purchasing the property. If there is a gift letter, the gift letter must be attached to the package. Let's also talk about the type of loan. If somebody is borrowing money to purchase the property, then the type of loan that they are obtaining has to be included in the pre-qualification or pre-approval letter. And the name of the purchaser or buyer has to be included. The letter has to be coming from an approved lender with the letterhead of the lender, and the phone number and contact information as well as their name has to be included in the letter. So it cannot be coming from an unidentified lender. If the correct requirements are not provided, okay, the buyer could not only lose the opportunity to purchase the property, but if they have already paid any deposit, they could lose it. So there is an extension and forfeiture form which must be initialed and signed in all the required areas of that form. And basically, the real estate agent must explain to the buyer that if they do not follow the contract according to the requirements, they could forfeit or lose their earnest money deposit. It is very, very important for our agents to make sure we explain to the consumer the danger of not following the time frames as well as all of the requirements, because they could lose their deposit. Nobody wants to do that. Let's move on to the next one, financing type. Usually the purchaser knows up front what type of program they're going to use. Obviously, if it's cash, we know that. But if they are financing the purchase, it really depends on what type of program they are using. If a property is listed on the HUD website as uninsurable, it may not be purchased with FHA financing. It could be purchased with cash, or it could be purchased with a conventional loan or a renovation loan, 203K financing. If it's a 203B repair escrow financing that will be used, then the amount has to be included in the line or the letters TDB, to be determined, because you may not know what will be the required repairs and the cost of that up front. If the purchaser is utilizing the $100 down payment option in the especially for properties that need a lot of work, then you have to enter the $100 down payment line. Okay, every line on that form or on the contract has to include information in it. Any blanks can cause that offer to be rejected. It's very, very important to know the contract, have a copy of the contract printed and fill it out before you actually go online to submit it. The next error is purchaser type and closing times. For anyone purchasing with cash or hard money, that is where they're calling this a cash purchase. The closing has to be within 30 days of the acceptance of the offer. If the purchaser is borrowing either with an FHA 203B 203B repair or conventional financing, or if the purchaser is a nonprofit organization, the closing has to happen within 45 days, whether it is owner-occupants or investors. If the buyer is using the 203K financing, which is a renovation loan, then the closing is for 60 days. Now, these closing dates and times are time of the essence. If the agent knows or suspects that the property is not going to close within that time frame, there is a specific form that has to be submitted, which is a request for an extension. That has to be signed by the buyer, and it has to be signed by the agent, and it has to be submitted 2 weeks before the closing date. They will provide a 2-week extension at a time, depending on what is the delay. In that form, it also requires that the reason for the extension be included. If a buyer or who is an investor by error submits an offer as an owner-occupant, that offer must be submitted, withdrawn, or canceled, and a new offer must be resubmitted. Our next error is not complying with the lead-based paint requirement, which is a federal law that requires that any property built prior to 1978 has to include the lead-based paint addendum. The form has to be signed and initialed by the broker and the buyer, not the salesperson. So it has to be initialed and signed in the appropriate spaces. Now, there is also most HUD properties will have a property condition report. When the property was taken over by HUD, they sent over a property manager who will take a look at the property, inspect all of the components of the property, and create a report. That report is included in the website. It is the agent's responsibility to download that form, share it with the purchaser, let them know what has been found in the past with the property, and get them to sign it or initial it in the appropriate line. That form then becomes a part of the sales package, and it has to be included when the package is sent over to HUD. The broker is required to inform the purchaser the condition of the sale, and the buyer has a right and responsibility to satisfy their desire to know what they're buying by requesting an inspection. If they do that, then the winterizing or dewinterizing of the property has to be done only with authorization, and there is a specific form that has to be used to request that the property be dewinterized, and then at their own cost, the buyer has to pay for rewinterizing the property. But if they choose not to do an inspection, they still need to receive that property condition report, sign it, and include it in the sales package. Error number 11. This is the buyer selected closing agent certification and the instructions for closing. The buyer has a right to select who the closing agent will be dealing with the transaction at the closing. If the company that they are choosing to use, or the title company, or title agent, or closing agent, or attorney, has previously done any HUD closings in the past, they already have the required information. That information has to be included in the form with the numbers that correspond to that title or closing agent. If the escrow company or closing agent has not done a closing for a HUD transaction in the past, then in order to be approved to do the closing for that property, they have to include the closing agent's errors and omissions insurance policy, as well as the state business license in order to be screened and approved to be able to close on that. Again, if they've already closed on HUD transactions in the past, they don't have to go through that process, but the numbers identifying them have to be included in the form. Error number 12 is not being prepared with the NADE number. Every sales agent or broker that wants to write contracts for a HUD property must obtain a NADE number. That includes the name, address, EIA or Social Security number, the phone number of the company, and the broker's signature. By submitting that to HUD and becoming a registered selling agent, that certification of the broker has to be included. Only approved HUD agents can submit offers or bids on behalf of buyers. The broker's signature has to be included. Now, there are offices that may not have the possibility of getting the broker's signature for every contract. But if that is the case, then there is a form where the broker can designate someone else to sign on their behalf. That has to be submitted with the offer, but it also has to be signed with a letter included in the package. The letter has to be on the brokerage letterhead. It has to be case specific, so it's not like you're going to write a letter and use it for all the contracts. The letter has to include the specific case number for that particular property. And the broker of record, who has to be a registered HUD broker, has to also include the NADE number. Again, NADE stands for Name, Address, Identification Number for the broker. The broker also has to sign it. It cannot be docu-signed. It cannot be electronically signed. It has to be signed in ink and included in the package. So this concludes the 12 most common errors when submitting any HUD offers. If you have any questions at all, you can email to my email address at dianabustamante@realtyexecutives.com, and we will respond to you as soon as we get your question. Thank you so much for attending today, and have a wonderful day.